Good morning, everyone. We live in a world where people often look at what you have before they look at who you are, the car you drive, the clothes you wear, the number in your bank account. But sometimes someone looks past all of that. She saw me, not my money, not my status, not my bank balance. She saw the person behind it all. And maybe that's what real connection is about. When everything you own is taken away, what remains is who you are and whether someone can see that, value that, and choose you for that. Today, I want to talk about She Saw Me, Not My Bank Balance. There was a time when I thought people noticed what I had before they noticed who I was: the clothes, the car, the place I lived, the things I could afford, the numbers sitting quietly inside a bank account. It was easy to believe that these things said something about me. Maybe they did, but not the things I wanted them to say, because money can tell people what you own, it can tell them what you can buy, it can tell them where you can go, but it cannot tell them what keeps you awake at night. It cannot tell them what you are afraid of. It cannot tell them how many times you have started again after failing. It cannot tell them how many times you smiled when you were tired. It cannot tell them what kind of person you become when nobody is watching. And then she came into my life. She didn't ask about my bank balance. She didn't ask what I could buy her. She didn't look at me like I was a collection of numbers. She looked at me like I was a person. And honestly, that felt strange, because when you get used to people measuring you by what you have, someone who measures you by who you are can feel almost unfamiliar. She listened to the stories I didn't tell very often. She noticed the quiet moments. She noticed when I was pretending to be okay. She remembered little things I had forgotten I had said. She didn't seem impressed by the things that impressed everyone else. And somehow that meant more. I remember thinking about it later. She could have looked at everything I owned, but she looked at me. She could have asked what I could give her, but she wanted to know what I believed in. She could have been interested in the life I could provide, but she was interested in the life I was trying to build. There is a difference, a very quiet difference, but once you understand it, you don't forget it. Because when someone sees your bank balance, they see a number. When someone sees your character, they see a story. And my story was not perfect, it still isn't. There were mistakes, there were disappointments. There were days when I didn't know what I was doing. There were moments when confidence disappeared. There were times when I had to rebuild parts of myself without telling anyone that they had fallen apart. But she didn't need me to be perfect. She just wanted me to be real. And maybe that's one of the rarest things a person can receive. Not admiration, not attention, not someone being impressed, but acceptance, someone looking at you without calculating your value. Someone sitting beside you without wondering what they can gain. Someone staying when there is nothing glamorous happening, because life is mostly made of ordinary moments. There are no cameras in those moments, no applause, no audience, no perfect soundtrack, just two people sitting together talking, sometimes laughing, sometimes saying nothing, and somehow, those moments become the ones you remember. Money can buy a beautiful room, but it cannot make a room feel like home. Money can buy a watch, but it cannot give you more time. Money can buy a table full of food, but it cannot guarantee that the people sitting around it love you. Money can open doors, but it cannot make someone walk through one for the right reasons. And I think I finally understood that what matters is not what someone sees when you arrive. What matters is what they see when everything else disappears. Take away the car, take away the clothes, take away the expensive things, take away the title, take away the reputation, take away the number in the bank. What is left? Your choices, your memories, your kindness, your mistakes, your ability to love, your ability to forgive, your ability to stand back up. That is the part of you that cannot be purchased. And she saw that part. Maybe she didn't see it perfectly. Maybe nobody ever sees another person perfectly, but she tried. And sometimes trying to understand someone is more meaningful than pretending you already do. She didn't need a perfect version of me. She wanted the honest one, the tired one, the uncertain one, the hopeful one, the one who sometimes had answers, and the one who sometimes had nothing to say. That changed something inside me, because I began to wonder how often we do the opposite, how often we look at someone's shoes before we look at their face, how often we notice someone's car before we notice their character, how often we ask what someone does before we ask what they care about, how often we confuse wealth with worth, and how often we forget that the richest person in the room may not be the person with the most money. Maybe it is the person who has someone they can call at midnight. Maybe it is the person whose family still wants them around. Maybe it is the person who can sit alone and still feel at peace. Maybe it is the person who has made mistakes and learned from them. Maybe it is the person who can give without expecting something back. Maybe it is the person who has very little and still finds a reason to be grateful. We spend so much of life trying to prove that we are enough money, enough success, enough beauty, enough achievement, enough recognition, enough everything. And sometimes all we really want is for one person to look at us and say, I see you, not what you own, not what you can give me, not what other people think about you. There is something powerful about being seen without having to perform. You don't have to explain every success. You don't have to hide every failure. You don't have to pretend that you have everything figured out. You can simply exist, and someone can still choose to stay. That kind of connection cannot be measured in numbers. There is no currency for it, no price tag, no account statement, no investment portfolio. It is something much more fragile and much more valuable: trust, respect, understanding, time, presence, the willingness to stay when things are not easy, the willingness to listen when there is nothing impressive to say, the willingness to care when there is nothing to gain. She taught me that without giving me a lesson. She didn't stand in front of me and explain it, she just lived it. She showed me that sometimes the most meaningful thing another person can give you is their attention without conditions, their time without calculation, their honesty without cruelty, their presence without an agenda. And I started to understand. Maybe love isn't about finding someone who is impressed by your life. Maybe it is about finding someone who is interested in sharing it. There is a difference between someone wanting your lifestyle and someone wanting your life. One is attracted to what surrounds you, the other is curious about what is inside you. One asks what you can provide, the other asks how you are doing. One sees the balance, the other sees the person. And when she saw me, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. I didn't feel like I needed to become richer, funnier, more successful, more impressive. I could simply be there. And somehow that was enough. Maybe that is why the title matters so much to me. She saw me, not my bank balance. Because it isn't really about money. Money is just the symbol. The real question is, who are we when nobody is impressed by what we have? Who are we when the room is quiet? Who are we when the applause stops? Who are we when there is nothing left to prove? And who stays when there is nothing left to gain? Those questions are harder than they sound, because we can spend years building an image and only a few moments discovering whether someone actually knows us. I have met people who had very little and gave everything they could, and I have met people who had everything and still felt empty. That taught me something: possession and abundance are not the same thing. You can own a lot and still lack what matters. And you can own very little and still have a life full of meaning. A bank account can tell you how much money is there. It cannot tell you how much love is there. It cannot tell you how many people would sit beside you when life becomes difficult. It cannot tell you whether someone trusts you. It cannot tell you whether you have been kind. It cannot tell you whether you have made somebody's difficult day a little easier. Those are different kinds of wealth. The kind that doesn't appear on paper. The kind that doesn't need a password. The kind that doesn't disappear when the market changes. And maybe that is the kind we should spend more time building. Not just a successful life, but a meaningful one. Not just a comfortable home, but a place where people feel safe. Not just a strong bank balance, but strong relationships, not just a good reputation, but a good character, because eventually, the things we collect become quiet, the expensive things become ordinary, the new becomes old. The numbers change, the attention moves somewhere else, but the way we treated people, that stays. The way we made someone feel, that stays. The moments we shared, those stay, and the person who saw you before the world decided what you were worth. That person stays somewhere inside your memory. She saw me, not the account, not the possessions, not the image me. And maybe the greatest gift wasn't that she loved what she saw. Maybe it was that she gave me the courage to see it too. Not a perfect person, not a finished person, just a human being, still learning, still making mistakes, still becoming, still trying. And maybe that is enough. Maybe being seen is not about someone discovering something extraordinary inside you. Maybe it is about someone noticing the ordinary parts and deciding that they matter: the quiet mornings, the difficult conversations, the small acts of kindness, the moments when you choose patience instead of anger, the moments when you apologize, the moments when you forgive. the moments when you keep going even though nobody is watching. Those things don't have a price, and maybe they shouldn't, because the moment we put a price on everything, we begin to forget what cannot be bought. So I stopped asking, what do I have? And started asking, who am I? I stopped asking, what can I afford? And started asking, what can I give? I stopped worrying so much about being impressive and started caring more about being honest. Because she had already shown me something I should have understood much earlier. The right person doesn't need to count what you have. They notice what you carry inside, the fears you hide, the dreams you protect, the scars you don't talk about, the kindness you don't announce, the effort nobody applauds. And when someone sees those things, really sees them, you understand that maybe being known is more valuable than being admired. Maybe being trusted is more valuable than being envied. Maybe being loved for who you are is more valuable than being wanted for what you own. And when I think about that, I don't think about money anymore. I think about a moment, a look, a conversation, a person who didn't need a number to decide my value, a person who looked past everything that could disappear and noticed the one thing that would remain. Me, there are moments in life when you begin to understand that being valued and being admired are two completely different things. I used to think that if I achieved enough, earned enough, built enough, then people would naturally see my worth. But success can attract attention. It doesn't always attract understanding, and attention is not the same as connection. When people see what you have, they may be curious about your life. When someone sees who you are, they become curious about your heart. That difference can change everything, because money can make an introduction easier. It can make certain doors open. It can create comfort. It can give you choices. But it cannot tell another person whether you are kind. It cannot tell them whether you keep your promises. It cannot tell them whether you listen. It cannot tell them whether you know how to stay when things become difficult. Those things are discovered slowly, through ordinary days, through difficult conversations, through silence, through disappointment, through the moments when there is nothing to gain. And that was what made her different. She wasn't interested only in the version of me that looked successful. She was interested in the version that existed when nobody was watching. The person who gets tired, the person who doubts himself, the person who doesn't always know the right answer, the person who sometimes needs someone else to simply sit beside him. She didn't make me feel ashamed of those parts. She made them feel human. And maybe that's what we are all looking for. Someone who doesn't make us perform, someone who doesn't require us to walk into the room carrying proof of our value, someone who doesn't measure affection by what we can provide, someone who can look at us and somehow say, you don't have to impress me. Just be honest. There is a strange freedom in that. You stop trying to be extraordinary every minute. You stop worrying about whether you're successful enough. You stop comparing your life with somebody else's. You start noticing the things that were already there. A conversation that makes you laugh, a quiet evening, a friend who checks on you, a family member who remembers something small, a person who stays beside you when you're having a difficult day. Those moments don't look expensive, but they become priceless. And maybe that's because real value has never really been about price. We just live in a world that likes to put numbers on everything: a salary, a house, a car, a business, a watch, a balance, a number of followers, a title, a position, a status. We measure and compare. And somewhere in all of that, we can forget the person standing underneath the numbers. A human being can have a million reasons to smile and still feel lonely. Another person can have very little and still feel deeply loved. So maybe the question isn't how much someone has. Maybe the question is what kind of person they are when they have something, and what kind of person they become when they have nothing. Because character becomes visible when comfort disappears. Anyone can be generous when they have plenty, but generosity means something different when someone gives from what little they have. Anyone can be kind when life is easy. But kindness becomes powerful when someone is hurting and still chooses not to hurt others. Anyone can stay when everything is beautiful, but staying through the difficult parts tells you something deeper. She didn't know every answer about me. She didn't need to. She just paid attention. And sometimes attention is one of the purest forms of care: to remember, to listen, to notice, to ask again, to recognize when someone's voice changes, to understand that silence can also be an answer. Those things don't require money. They require presence. And presence is something we often underestimate. We can buy gifts. We can plan expensive experiences. We can create beautiful memories. But sometimes the most meaningful thing you can give someone is simply your time, to sit with them, to hear them, to stay. Without checking the clock, without looking for something in return, without wondering whether the moment is useful, just being there. That's how trust grows quickly, not all at once. A little conversation here, a shared secret there, a difficult truth, an apology, a moment of forgiveness. And eventually you realize that someone knows you, not your public version, not your successful version, not the version you show when you want the world to think everything is under control, the real one. And they are still there, that is rare. And when something is rare, you learn not to take it for granted, because money can be earned again. Things can be replaced, jobs can change, opportunities can come back, but some people, some moments, some kinds of trust once lost are not so easy to recover. So I learned to appreciate the people who don't ask what I can give them before deciding whether I matter, the people who don't need evidence of success before offering respect, the people who don't confuse possessions with character, the people who understand that every person carries a story that cannot be seen from the outside. And maybe she saw that, maybe she understood that behind every confident face there can be uncertainty, behind every achievement there can be sacrifice. Behind every smile there can be a story nobody knows. She didn't need me to explain every chapter, she simply allowed me to be human. And that kind of acceptance changes the way you see yourself. Because when someone believes in the person underneath everything, you begin to believe in that person too. You begin to realize that your worth was never sitting inside a bank account. It was never parked in a driveway. It was never hanging on a wall. It was never printed on a business card. It was always in the way you treated people, the way you handled pain, the way you responded to failure, the way you loved, the way you forgave, the way you kept moving, the way you tried to become better without needing everyone to notice. And maybe that's the real wealth, not having more, but needing less proof that you matter, because when you know who you are, you don't need every room to validate you. You don't need every person to admire you. You don't need to explain your value. You can simply live quietly, honestly. And when someone comes along who sees that, someone who looks beyond the surface, someone who doesn't calculate your worth, you understand that what you found is more valuable than anything money could buy. Not because she ignored everything I had, but because she understood that those things were never the most important thing about me. She saw the person before the possessions, the heart before the balance, the human being before the image. And once someone sees you that way, you begin to understand what it means to truly be seen, not judged, not measured, not compared, just seen. And sometimes that is all a person needs to feel, that for a moment they can stop proving themselves and simply be themselves.